When we multiply or divide with rational numbers, we multiply or divide their absolute values like normal. If our problem has different signs, so a positive times a negative or a negative divided by a positive, our answer is going to be negative. If our problem has the same sign, then our answer is going to be positive. So let's look at some examples. The first problem says positive 5 times negative 7. I know that I'm just going to multiply their absolute values as if this were a normal problem. So I would do 5 times 7, which would give me 35. Then I look at my problem. I notice that I have a positive 5 and a negative 7, so I'm multiplying with different signs. That means that my solution is going to be negative. So positive 5 times negative 7 is negative 35. Negative 9 times negative 8. I'm just going to multiply their absolute values, so 9 times 8 gives me 72. Because 9 and 8 are both negative, they have the same sign, that means that my answer is going to be positive. So negative 9 times negative 8 is positive 72. Negative 4 times positive 15. I'm going to multiply their absolute value, so 4 times 15 gives me 60. And then I notice that I have different signs, a negative here and a positive here. Since I'm multiplying with different signs, my product is going to be negative, so my answer is negative 60. For positive 55 divided by negative 11, I'm going to divide like normal with their absolute values, so 55 divided by 11 is 5. Then, because I have different signs, so a positive here and a negative here, I know that this quotient will be negative. So 55 divided by negative 11 is equal to negative 5. For negative 24 divided by negative 6, I'm going to divide the absolute values. So 24 divided by 6 gives me 4. Because both of these are the same sign, they are both positive, my solution is, or both negative, my solution is going to be positive. So negative 24 divided by negative 6 is positive 4. Negative 32 divided by positive 8. I'm going to divide my absolute values. I know that 32 divided by 8 is 4. And since these have different signs, a negative here and a positive here, I know that my quotient is going to be negative. So negative 32 divided by positive 8 is negative 4. Now let's multiply and divide with decimals. Just like with integers, we are multiplying or dividing the absolute values just like normal. So for negative 1.5 times negative 6, the first thing I'm going to do is multiply the absolute values. So I'm going to multiply 1.5 times 6. When I'm multiplying with decimals, I don't need to line up the decimals. I can just multiply like normal. 6 times 5 gives me 30, so I write my 0 and carry my 3. 6 times 1 is 6, and then 6 plus 3 is 9. Then I need to remember to go back into my problem, and I see that there is a decimal here, and there is one number behind the decimal in my problem. That means that there's going to be one number behind the decimal in my solution. So 1.5 times 6 is 9.0, and I know that 9.0 is the same as just 9. Now I need to make sure that I have the correct sign. My problem shows that I'm multiplying a negative by a negative, so I'm multiplying with the same sign. When I multiply with the same sign, my solution should be positive. So my solution is going to be positive 9. Now let's look at 3.75 divided by negative 0.3. For this, I notice that I'm dividing a positive by a negative. Since I am dividing a positive and a negative, those are different signs, so I know that my solution is going to be negative. Now I just need to find out what that solution is. My dividend here is 3.75, and I'm going to use the absolute value of negative 0.3, which is 0.3, to divide. But I remember that I can never have a decimal in my divisor. So I'm going to move this decimal one place to the right, and if I move the decimal in my divisor, I must also move the decimal in my dividend. So my new decimal is right here. And now my problem says 37.5 divided by 3. So let's start dividing. I'm going to divide 3 by 3, and I know that that will go in one time, and then I multiply. 1 times 3 is 3, and when I subtract, I'm left with 0. Now I need to bring down 7, and I'm going to divide 7 by 3. 3 will go into 7 2 times, so I'm going to put my 2 here. Then I multiply 2 times 3 to get 6, and I subtract. 7 minus 6 is 1, and now I'm going to bring down my 5. 15 divided by 3 is 5, and 5 times 3 is 15. So when I subtract, I'm left with 0, and I'm left with nothing to bring down. I need to remember to come here and bring my decimal up from my divisor, or dividend. So my answer is 12.5, but we remember that I was dividing a positive by a negative, so I was dividing with different signs, and that means that my answer is going to be negative 12.5. Negative 4.82 times 3.1. For this problem, I'm multiplying a negative by a positive, so I know that my answer is going to be negative. So we just need to find out what that solution is. So we're going to multiply 4.82 times 3.1, and remember when I'm multiplying, I do not need to line up decimals. And I'm going to multiply like normal. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 8 is 8, 1 times 4 is 4. Now I'm going to need to multiply by my 3. So the first thing I need to do is put a 0 here as a placeholder. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 8 is 24, so I write my 4 and carry my 2. 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 plus 2 is 14. Now I'm going to add. 2 plus 0 is 2. 8 plus 6 is 14, so I write my 4, carry my 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 plus 4 is 9. And then 4 and 1 are not being added to anything. Now, when I look at my problem, I notice that I actually have 2 decimals. This decimal has 2 numbers behind it, and this decimal has 3 numbers behind, or 1 number behind it. That means that there is a total of 3 numbers behind the decimals in my problem. So, in my solution, I also need to move 3 places to the left, and I'm going to put my decimal right there. So my solution is going to be 14.942. But we said that since we were multiplying a negative by a positive, we know that that means that my answer is going to be negative. So it is negative 14.942. Now let's multiply and divide with fractions. Just like with other rational numbers, we multiply or divide the absolute values just like normal. And then when we're finished, all that we have to do is simplify our fraction and figure out whether it's going to be positive or negative. So for my first problem, negative 3/8 times negative 2/3, I am just going to multiply like normal. And I know that when I multiply fractions, I multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and 8 times 3 is 24. So my fraction is 6 over 24, but I need to see if that can be simplified. Well, I know that it can because I know that both 6 and 24 are divisible by 6. So I'm going to divide both of these by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 24 divided by 6 is 4. Now I know that this cannot be simplified, so that's going to be my final simplified fraction. Now let's look at our problem to see what kind of sign we're going to use. We're multiplying a negative by a negative, so we're multiplying with same signs, and that means that our answer is going to be positive. So negative 3/8 times negative 2/3 is positive 1/4. Now let's look at 1/5 divided by negative 3/4. I see that I'm dividing a positive by a negative, which means I'm dividing with different signs, so my answer is going to be negative. Now let's look at dividing. We need to remember our rule for dividing fractions. Our rule is always to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply our divisor of 1/5 by the reciprocal of our dividend 3/4. The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. So now that I've changed it to a multiplication problem, I'm just going to multiply numerator by numerator and denominator by denominator. 1 times 4 is 4, and 5 times 3 is 15. I know that 4 and 15 do not have any factors in common other than 1, so this fraction cannot be simplified. So 4/15 is my simplified fraction, but I need to remember that I said that my answer should be negative. So my answer is negative 4/15. Finally, I have negative 2 1/4 times positive 1 2/3. Since I'm multiplying a negative by a positive, that's different signs, I know that my answer is going to be negative. Now I'm just going to multiply. Well, when I'm multiplying with fractions, I need to make sure that I do not have mixed numbers. So I need to change all of my mixed numbers into improper fractions. To do that, I'm going to multiply my denominator by my whole number, so 4 times 2 is 8, and then add my numerator. 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 plus 1 is 9. So my new numerator is 9, and my denominator remains 4. I need to multiply this by the improper fraction for 1 2/3. So I'm going to multiply my numerator, or my denominator, times my whole number. 3 times 1 is 3. Then add my numerator. So 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 plus 2 is 5. My new numerator is 5, and my denominator remains 3. Now I'm going to multiply. 9 times 5 gives me 45, and 4 times 3 gives me 12. Well, when I look at these, I know that I can divide both of these by 3. So, to simplify my fraction, I'll divide by 3. 45 divided by 3 is 15, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. Well, you notice that I still have an improper fraction. I can leave it as an improper fraction if it's simplified, or I can change it into a mixed number. To change it into a mixed number, I would divide 15 by 4. I know that I can't divide 1 by 4, so I'm going to move to 15. And 4 will go into 15 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12, and when I subtract, I'm left with 3. So, as a mixed number, this has a whole number of 3, a numerator of 3, and the denominator is going to remain 4. So, it's 3 3/4. But if we go back to my original problem, I know that when I'm multiplying a negative by a positive, those are different signs, and so my answer needs to be negative. So my answer here should be negative 3 3/4 or negative 15/4. Both are acceptable answers.